National Signing Day, you talk about Ohio State being the standard, and now Oregon meeting that standard and eclipsing it on the field. They get a cornerback flip that was enormous on National Signing Day. Your obvious assessment, I guess, is that the class was exceptional. Dan Lanning has got just juice, and man, this brand is exploding.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you bring in the top recruiting class in the Big Ten. Now, there's still time left in the 2025 cycle. Technically, that could change. But as I mentioned earlier, statement off the field, statements on the field. That's kind of the summary of Oregon's season to this point in the Big Ten. And they can just add another chapter to that book if they win the Big Ten championship on Saturday night. So flipping Naeem Offord from Ohio State, I didn't even expect that one. It seemed like he was trending towards Auburn. Now, he was always trending away from Ohio State. That much had been written about as early as July. There were Ohio State sites that were writing, Naeem Offord's probably going to flip. It was a question of where. But for them to not only pull that one off, but to keep Dallas Wilson, who everybody thought was flipping to Florida, myself included, by the way. I had been told by someone close to the situation that he was going to flip to Florida, that the NIL offer was enough, and that his entire inner circle believed it was going to be Florida. There were decommitment posts that were written by people that cover Oregon recruiting that were not posted because they were all expecting, Dallas Wilson's going to flip, and Oregon pulled a rabbit out of the hat. It's strange to say that for someone who's been committed to Oregon for a very long time, but that is what they did. Is at the last moment, whether it was NIL or something else, I don't know. But, I mean, you can make whatever guess you would like. But that was a huge win for Oregon there, and they kept Brandon Finney away from Ohio, or away from Penn State. He's from the east, from the northeast of the United States. Penn State is in his backyard. I think he's actually from the state of Pennsylvania. He'd been reassessed as a 5-star according to 24/7 Sports. Penn State was making a big effort. Michigan was making a big effort. And Oregon was able to keep him. This is the best wide receiver and cornerback signing class that Oregon has ever signed. And it might be the best combination of perimeter talent in the country for the 2025 cycle.
Wow. Okay. Penn State and Oregon get together on Saturday night for the Big Ten championship. And then, of course, Oregon marches on from there. They're going to be the 1 seed, obviously. If they win, if they lose, they got to be the 5 seed. So it's
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I cannot see Notre Dame at 11-1 with a loss to NIU being the 5 seed over the loser of the Big Ten championship game.
However, if Penn State loses, how do you elevate them or keep them in front of Ohio State?
Pretty easily. They've got 11 wins and Ohio State has got 10. Penn State's 2 losses. Penn State's 2 losses would be at home to Ohio State.
Yes.
And the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. The committee has been declarative for the SEC, not every other conference, but I think the Big Ten will apply. They've been declarative that you're not going to be punished for making the conference championship game. Sure. So if Penn State is ranked ahead of Ohio State right now, they should stay ranked ahead of Ohio State. But then, of course, when asked about SMU, it was, oh, well, that could happen. They could fall. And it's like, what are we doing here? I have been a proponent of SEC bias for a long time. I've said it's very real, but it's usually warranted. It is not warranted this year. We have played the results on the field. This is still, you want to make the case it's the best conference in America? Fine. Don't sit there and sell me a bag of goods that the SEC is just light years ahead of every other conference right now. It's not. We are watching the matchups every single week play out in real time. Clemson, South Carolina, both really good teams. Hard-nosed competitive football game. Where's the SEC superiority? I know Georgia beat the crap out of Clemson, but South Carolina's a team that people are saying, well, they should be in the college football playoff. They're the hottest team in the country. Well, they scraped by Clemson by 3 points. If you play that game out 10 times, each team's going to win probably 5 times. Georgia Tech went toe-to-toe with Georgia. Cal was able to beat Auburn in a battle of bottom dwellers in both of these leagues. Like, you can, Florida got trounced by Miami, who's not going to make the playoff. But Florida beat a team that was supposed to make the playoff in Ole Miss. Like, there are other examples. Those are just a few. But the SEC bias, I've always been kind of dismissive of the crowd that rail against that, I am far more in their camp for this college football season. I don't think that's a bad thing for the sport, but I do think it needs to be acknowledged, and yet it's not.
I understand it from both sides. I also believe that the SEC is still the best conference, but it is not by a wide margin.
No.
Real quick, and again, here's the Ohio State argument against Penn State. Won it on the road. I don't want to say decisively, but statistically, we're the superior team. 1 second loss by 1 point on the road against Oregon. What if Oregon beats Penn State by 2 or 3 scores? And I know that the committee says they're dismissing conference championships, but I don't know how you can ignore that. And then Ohio State beat the other best team in the conference, Indiana, by 23 points, and Penn State didn't play them. It's such
Ohio
a better
State also
resume.
lost to a 7-5 Michigan team as a 20-point home favorite.
But those other 3 points are just so.
I agree. Here's where I'll push back. Oregon wins the game by a single point. Yes, Ohio State could have had a field goal for the win if Will Howard doesn't pump fake to the sideline, but Dan Lanning also managed the clock masterfully coming down the stretch with the Bill Belichick-esque sort of decision. That game was only that close, and it would have been, a single-digit game otherwise, but that game was only that close because the replay review botched an opportunity to stop the game, and Ohio State wouldn't have had 7 points that they got. The first touchdown that Ohio State scored, they did not deserve to have. Oregon intercepted the ball. It was mind-bogglingly ruled a catch on the field for Ohio State, and then the Buckeyes rushed up to the line, got the snap off in time, and somehow replay missed it. So Oregon only won by a point. Well, if we're going to go into details about the games and not just discuss the results, let's discuss the 7 points that Ohio State was given in that moment that they did not deserve to have. And you cannot argue it. The replay is evidently clear. Ohio State's tight end never catches it. Jeff Bossa has it. Ball never hits the ground. And yet the officials blew the call. And the Buckeyes got 7 points that they wouldn't otherwise have had. So, yes, it was a 1 point win. But that happened. Oregon also threw away a couple of points on special teams. They botched an extra point and then didn't get a 2-point conversion later, chasing points in the first half. They did not play a perfectly clean game. Neither did Ohio State. Will Howard mishandled a snap on third down. Ohio State committed a couple of costly penalties. I mean, they were on the road, so you
had this
figure,
crazy onside kick. We had all sorts of things.
Yeah. The onside kick that wasn't designed to be that. It was just something they knew could happen. There were a lot of things that went back and forth in that football game. But if they played again on a neutral field, Ohio State would probably be favored, and neither team could win.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not arguing that Ohio State got ripped off in any way. Oregon won fair and square. I'm comparing the Ohio State performance against what could be the Penn State performance.
Yeah, I think that's nullified by the Michigan loss.
Yeah, I get your point. All right,
that is such at home. That is such a bad loss that I don't think you could look at the Indiana game and say, "Well, Ohio State should be the 5 seed." No, you lost at home to a team that is not good. Penn State lost at home to a team that's really good, and then if they lose the Big Ten championship game, not a guarantee, they would have lost to a team at a neutral site who's really, really good, the only unbeaten in all of college football. Those losses, I don't think you punish Penn State and drop them down to the 6 or 7 spot. Okay. They should get the 5 seed.
To me, in your argument, you're bringing in another component. I'm keeping it within Penn State and Oregon and Ohio State to show that Ohio State's played better football within that. And then I'm going to the next best team in the conference. For
style points could matter. I could see that being the case. If Oregon wins by 20, Penn State could get dropped. But if they win by 7 and 10 points, I don't think Penn State gets punished for making the Big Ten title game.
Okay. Spencer McLaughlin, locked on Ducks and college football, of course. Spencer, we always appreciate the conversation and enjoy the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.